I do so love talking to this lady. Let's just get straight down to business for this episode of Wellness Wednesday. Hello, Diahanne Rhiney.
Hello, Angie Green.
Hey.
The voice. I always say.
About today, I don't know about... Diahanne, we've been covering some really interesting subjects, and even though we have a core subject, we could go off because one subject opens up so much other stuff, so especially like when we do burnout, finding time for yourself, the power of meditation. You could really go off onto other subjects. And even though we could have spoken about the power of meditation with the subject we're going to talk about today, I still think they're two separate things. So today I want to tap your brain about psychological wellness, especially in the midst of grief and loss. How do you build those building blocks to get yourself psychologically, I'm not going to say strong, psychologically balanced in the midst of loss?
I mean, and that's, it's a personal subject for me. I've been there. And, people, it's interesting when you just said strong and then you corrected it, because it's not even about being strong. It's about really trying to balance what you're going through, because it is such an emotive and highs and lows of what you go through. But it's about trying to deal with those highs and lows in a way that hopefully brings you to a place where you can exhale.
Yeah.
Because it's, because when you do lose someone, especially someone close to you, it's not like I can tell you that that person's going to come back, because they're not, so it's something that you have to deal with. And it's about what is the best way to deal with this for you. I mean, there's a little book, honestly, it's a tiny little book. I recommend it all the time. And it's called Good Grief.
Okay.
It is such a beautiful book. It's called Good Grief. And it just really takes you through the emotions of ups and downs of grief. And I think sometimes what we need to understand is when you lose someone, I always, my analogy is when I look down, it's like I had an arm. And then when I look down now, like in regards to my mum, I've got a stub. So I knew I had an arm. I can see that I had an arm. But what I've done is you adapt. You adapt to that new situation. It took me a while. For me, it was 2 years till I really totally got up one day and said, my God, she's never coming back. But that was something, the process I had to go through. Because, when someone dies, initially, everybody's around you, aren't they? Everybody's around you. You have the funeral, you have the planning, you have so much to go on that you're actually living on adrenaline, and you're not actually given that space to grieve or even come to terms with stuff. And it's when the noise stops and there's the quietness that you then can begin to process, to heal. And I know people say, healing and time is a good... And it is true, though, because it does take you a process to heal. But that's why things like meditation, things about just being still.
What if you can't sit still, Diahanne?
Important.
What if the psychological effects of losing somebody have taken their toll so strongly that you are afraid to sit still because there's stuff that's going to come up that you're probably not ready to deal with?
And you know what? And that's very, very true. But it's going to get to the point at one stage that you're going to have to face those, whatever it is for you, and be still at one point. It might not happen for years. you know. The thing is, what I think is most important is when grief starts to become so negative that your health is impacted, you know, that you, like, you know, my sister was angry for a long time, and anger is a stress, and it sits in the
Yes, it
body,
does. It
you know.
manifests in
And I
other
was
ways.
like, yes. So I was like, no, we need to deal with this anger of being angry with God, angry with everybody, because our mum was no longer. So I do think those things that there's our big triggers
Yeah.
and things that you need to be aware of. And if, like, you've got yourself into that point of depression where you're not getting out of your bed, you're not washing, you're not, you know what I mean? Those are when it's taking a different turn. And those were things that you would definitely need to deal with.
You put the analogy beautifully. I look down, I have an arm. It functions. It gives me benefits. I can use it. It completes my life. Then I look down one day and there's a stub. But I have to keep going. I still have to go to work. I still have to look after my family. For my own good, I still have to eat healthily. I still have to exercise. This stub isn't quite allowing me to perform in the way that I used
to. Yeah.
How do I psychologically find the path to still use the stub, knowing that I'm not going to get the results that I had when I had the arm?
And I think it's also, when I say adapt, you do, and that's something. It's a process that you have to go through to decide, actually, does this work for me in this way, in a different way? Yeah. Am I able to get the same results? I always say to people, Diahanne before my mum's death and Diahanne after my mum's death is a two completely different Diahannes.
Okay.
You know, I'm not the same. I've gone through something that totally makes me appreciate life more. It allows me, for me, I lost my mum very suddenly, you know, which again in itself is another layer of trauma, you know, and I spoke to her at 11, by 12, that was it.
Okay.
And you know, you just think, how can you speak to someone at 11, then get a call to say, you know, your mum's collapsed, and then the doctor saying, sorry, she had an aneurysm, that's it.
On a psychological level, and I hear what you're saying, Diahanne before, Diahanne now, two different people. Without going too deep, can you remember the feelings? Can you find an adjective for that feeling?
I felt lost. I actually didn't know who I was, because what I realised, the relationship I had with my mum, which was, we were Batty and Bench. She was my best friend. She was my advisor, my mentor. I can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
And I just thought, who am I? I was just lost. You know, many times I'd go to call her when I needed advice. And you're like, oh, you know, it was, I just felt alien.
Okay.
Because, so for me, lost was what I felt. And then there was this pain, physical, not just psychological, physical and psychological pain that hurt so much, but there was no painkiller that you could take, you know. So it took me a while. I read a lot about grief, if I'm honest with you, and trying to process, for me, the stages and what that looked like.
Yeah.
And then to recognise, okay, what I'm feeling is normal, or it's what some people go through in grief.
Process.
Because I was thinking, this pain, this can't be normal. This was just physically and psychologically unbearable, you know. So I read a lot. I saw a grief counsellor who just talked me through, and I just found it that ear. And it was great that it wasn't my sister or brother who was going through grief themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to speak to someone who said, well, when I lost my mum, this is how I felt. Do you know what I mean? Because at that time, I was so selfish about my own grief. This is how I feel. I'm angry. I'm hurting.
But don't you have
I'm
to
sad.
own those feelings, Diane? Because look, if you're going to deal with loss from a psychological place to keep yourself balanced, then don't you have to be selfish? Because it's your psychological health.
No, but I think sometimes you're so, you got to think everybody's saying, oh, my condolences, and then you're worried about, I had to worry about my gran who'd lost her daughter.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that's like to lose a child.
Yes.
And whether you like it or not, you sometimes put your grief on the little bit on the back burner.
Right.
Because for me, I had my grandmother to take care of, and we all had to make sure that she was strong. I had my dad. There was so many other things going on that I felt a bit selfish if I was going to put myself first. But that's when, months afterwards, I said, actually, I need to put myself first, because if I'm not whole, if I'm not okay, nobody else around me is okay.
And then how do you then, if you don't put yourself first, how do you give to your immediate?
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Can't pour from an empty cup. Absolutely. Did you have
and I was empty
at the time?
See, that's the strange thing. I didn't. I just had a dog, and I do remember this so much. It's something I remember down to the T, even what I had on. When, the funeral was over, and, my sister has a son. She went home, her and her son, they grieved together, even though separately, but there was someone there. Yeah. My brother went home with his boys, 2 boys,
Yes.
I went home
to your dog.
To nothing, to the dog. And I remember sitting down, looking around and thought, I've never felt so lonely in my entire life. Even though I could see all the cards of sympathy and all of that. And it wasn't till then, it's funny how I can see when people get through grief a little quicker when they do have children or something. They've got to get up every morning. Whereas me, I could have stayed in my bed and who cared, because I'd had no one that I had to get up.
Yeah. I just wrote down lonely.
Oh, it was very lonely.
Were you ever at a time in a room full of people and still lonely?
Very, very. And I still, when Mother's Day comes along, I become jealous of other people. And that is the word.
And that's a real emotion. Jealous. It's a real emotion.
Yeah, no. And it's something I have to own.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's part of dealing with grief and dealing with all of these stuff. I have to own it. So when my friends say, oh, I'm going out, taking my mum out, and I'm happy for them, but I'm also very jealous.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I would do anything to be able to take my mum out again, But those are things, like I said, I don't think grief ever completely goes. There are triggers, like Mother's Day, like my mum's birthday and stuff like that. But once again, what I do, we celebrate my mum's birthday. We get a cake, we meet up as a family and we celebrate her life. And that is a way that psychologically we deal with that day. It's something, and we do it together and we feel supported and loved, and I don't feel lonely at all. And so there's different things that you can do to allow yourself permission to cry, to be up, feel a bit down on those days, or do things that pick you up on those days. And it's okay also, because before I also used to feel guilty if I was having a good time or enjoying myself on the day that she passed away or her birthday, you know.
But she'd
I
want
don't
to.
anymore.
Surely she would
Yeah,
want.
I don't anymore. I feel,
Yeah.
I smile, I dance around the room, I put on some Bob Marley and I sing and I dance and I say, Mum, this one is for
Oh,
you, because I know wherever you are, you're having a good time, poor people. I said, I'm surprised they didn't send you back with your mouth. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. But that gives you that permission
yeah,
to feel like that. It is so important.
yeah.
And giving your permission, it's okay to cry. It's okay. Because some people I know don't cry. They
Keep it in.
keep it all
What
in.
happens to that? That must
And it just explodes. You're like a Coke bottle, isn't it? If you shake it and it's going to explode
at
at
some
some
point.
point.
We are concentrating with this podcast about psychological wellness in the midst of grief and in the midst of loss. But psychological wellness, I do want to touch on you in the midst of relationships, whether they be work relationships, personal relationships. Sometimes we need to reposition people to protect our psychological wellness. Susan L. Taylor, who used to be the editor-in-chief of Essence magazine,
Essence.
I can't remember which one of her books it was from, but she said, not everybody deserves a front row seat in your life. I don't know if we've discussed this.
No, some of them don't even deserve in the back row. Them in exit. I'm
The way
telling
she
you.
put it, it was beautiful. So let's assume that the life of Diahanne Rhiney was going to be at the Dominion Theatre. Who are you going to give front row tickets to? Some people might need to be in row F, row Z. Some people might need to be in the upper circle at the back. They're still in your life. But to protect your psychological wellness, you need to reposition them. Is this...
I say friendships, it's something I've said before. Friendships have expiration dates,
Okay.
some
Yeah.
friendships. And I think that is something that we have to learn. That sometimes it's done its course.
Yes.
For whatever reason, it's done its course. You remember I said Diane before, mums and Diane after. And sometimes when you change and friendships don't change with you, which is fine, you know, you have to then make very clear decisions on, is this person enhancing my life or are they taken from my life?
Helping or
You know that sometimes you have those conversations and you speak to someone and you come off and you're exhausted. Them just like tick, tick, tick. And you just think, this can't be normal. Like, this is not okay. And I've actually said to friends, and I know people think I'm quite harsh. Once a year I look and I say, this person really... My mum used to have a saying, and this is what some of my friendships for my psychological safety, this is what I do. Mum used to say to me, there's some people in your life, family, friends, them is like costumes and them need to be kept in costumes.
I'm sorry.
Them like luggage. And she said the luggage need to be kept in customs. So I have a few people who are in costumes still. You know, because you have to do that. And people, I mean, recently somebody said to me, and people could not believe I did this. But I think as I've got older, my filter is broken. I keep telling people it's not very good. And it's because you just know who you are. You know what you're about. You know your tolerance. You know you get that little bit of experience. You know. And somebody came up to me recently at an event. Oh, I don't. Maybe you might have been there, Angie. I can't remember. And they said to me, "Hello, Diane," and I went, "Oh, you really don't have to say hello to me. I know you don't like me, and that's okay. But this hypocrisy actually is not healthy for me. So let's just not do this." And they went, "No, but I really do like." No, you don't. But this is okay. because I will never get that 5 minutes back, ever. So I'm not wasting my time or my energy doing it. So thank you very much, but no thanks. Another one, customs. Them in customs, because they're not even in the back row.
Diahanne, that is a very, very brave thing to do. And I admire you. Because I'm sure that, I'll speak for myself, there have been times throughout my career, and I've been on radio a long time, where I know I bring value to the table, I know I bring results, but I have tolerated certain things. And it has not done my psychological well-being any good. Because what happens is you get into the habit of pleasing others, emptying your cup, not pleasing yourself, and then I can't even find a cup here, then wondering why there's nothing to pour out. So I really
And then you don't
admire.
replenish either. And you don't replenish. What happens is we keep pouring, and then we need to know that when we take time for us, we replenish some of that cup.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're surrounded by so much going on, so much noise, that we don't even give us grace to even get time to replenish the cup.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this cycle. It's okay that not everybody is your cheerleader. That's not going to happen.
But we're programmed from the time we're little to be nice to everybody, to smile at everybody's, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And sometimes those practices, if you don't rewire them as you mature, they can create blockages that do affect your psychological well-being.
There is. And then also as well is like, I mean, I've got 2 friends who I've went to nursery with, infant school. Most of the people I went even to school with, they're not in my inner circle. Do you know what I mean? They served a purpose at that time, but they're not in my thing. And I had a friend who I've known for years. I mean, from junior school. And you know, when you grow up, I remember said one day, I said to her, "You're not particularly nice."
Oh.
I said, because you know, like when you've got good news, she'd always try to poo-poo it, and you know, and if you said, "Oh, Angie, I really liked your new car." Oh, well, it's okay for you because you're on radio. Do you know, she'd always find something to...
Isn't that her problem? Isn't that her problem?
Yeah, but then I thought, but I can't have you in my space.
Okay.
That's when you have to then say, that negativity I can't have in my space. You know? And I'm not saying everything's perfect, that all my friendships are amazing, but the people who are at my front row...
Yes.
I love them because they also tell me things I don't want to hear.
And that is so, so important, to keep balance in reality.
Yeah. And those are my cheerleaders, because, you know, they will tell me, no. You know, and not even the little things. I know you're going to think it's funny, but even if you go on toilet and your skirt's tucked into your thing and you know, they will be the first to say, come on, and untuck it. But you know, some people, they feel awkward and they want to tell you, but they don't. No, you're not my people.
Yeah.
You're not my people.
From a psychological point of view then, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it from your psychological well-being, how important is it to tell the truth, even in the midst of possibly hurting somebody?
Yeah, you must. I think there's a way you can deliver it.
1 to 10, Diahanne. 1 to 10.
And I'm learning about the delivery because I can be a bit blunt. It's all about the delivery, but being honest with people, saying, do you know what? I just found what you just did. It was quite draining, or I found it really selfish, or actually that hurt.
Yeah.
What you said absolutely hurt me. I felt that, you know, You just have to be honest.
What if someone, I'm sorry, because you're now getting me into the groove. What if someone doesn't have the psychological or the emotional intelligence to hear what you're saying and see it as an attack?
Okay, but that's where I think, that's where you do the work on yourself, because sometimes people will deflect and put on you what, because they know deep down what you're saying to them is true. And if that person is upset by what you're saying, this is how I've dealt with it. Recently, my bestie and I, and to this day, I don't even know what happened. Yeah? Well, I do, but certain parts I still don't.
Okay.
And I remember we had a conversation, and because I had raised something which didn't feel right with me, wasn't okay, they accused me of gaslighting them.
Okay.
And it caused we're no longer friends. And I just thought, how dare you? It's only when I went away and thought about it. How, when telling you something, the truth, or telling you something which hurt me or made me feel a certain way, how is that gaslighting you? That's your issue.
Yeah.
That's your issue. That is not my issue. And I'm not going to apologise for saying, this is how you made me feel.
Yes.
What's that saying? People forget what you said, forget what you've done, but they will never forget how you made you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a true thing, because, people have said things or done things, but when someone makes you feel a certain way, less than or not important or whatever it is, that sticks with you.
Yeah, it does.
That sticks with
It
you.
does.
And I think that's really important in your friendship. If you've got friends and you feel away, and even recently on a video that Oprah was in an interview with her, Gail, and somebody else, and she said, and this is what I think is the biggest thing in friendships.
Someone that's jealous with you.
Oi! Oi, oi, oi!
We were
Miss,
watching it at the same
as them saying our Caribbean mic drop. Yeah, because that's not okay. That's not okay. That's not. And psychologically, that messes with your head. It really messes with your head. Because I remember, I used to hide if I bought a new car. I used to hide my car around the corner. This is what I'm saying. People don't really know. And I used to downplay myself, because this same thing when people, who does she think she... I'm like, I'm just doing my little bit in the world, working hard and it's my problem. How does that work?
Oh, do you remember I said at the beginning of this, we have these subjects and then they go off. The fact that you have to downplay who you are, that is a warning sign in itself. I 110% resonate with that. The fact that you are God-given with dynamics and creativity, and because of being in the presence of other people, them not knowing how to handle it, you have to downplay it. That messes with your head.
It really does. And for a long time, and if I'm being very honest, I came off the scene a few years ago for a good while. I would say about 5 years, because psychologically it really played with me.
Burns you out.
And I came off the scene because I thought, I can't deal with all of these stuff. It's too much. I mean, I'm back out there, but I'm a different person.
Yes. Yeah. You have a different set of armour on.
Yes, and I've done the work on myself.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you want to please these people? What is that saying about you? Why do you care? Like one of my twins always says to the other twin, why do you care what people think? Who are these people? Who are they? Just remember who you are, where you've come from, where you started, where you're going. And so to all of those people out there who feel that I've done you wrong or don't like me for whatever reason, go along.
Take time, Diane.
It's your business. It's not my business, you know? And I wish you well. And I generally do wish them well. But don't come into my space and try and pull me down, because that's not happening. Maybe before, not now. Me is big and bad now, and I've done the work. I've done the work on me. I've met with my therapist. I've looked in the mirror. And like I said, I'm not perfect. Far from it. But I generally work on the things that I think need improvement. But at the core of who I am, I'm a good person.
Amen.
I'm a good person. So, you know what? To everyone, really know who's your tribe. It's so important.
We're all
know who your tribe.
We're all born with good
and
enough.
Each person, each of your friends will nourish different areas of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Because, you know, like if I want to something about church, I'll go to my church sisters who will uplift me in a different way. If somebody intellect, you know what I mean? You have different friends who serve different things, you know? And I think that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all born with goodness in us. And I do think through childhood trauma, relationship trauma, just experiences, it does chip away. But then, like you say, we've got to do the work on ourselves, and we have to protect our psychological wellness so that the core of who we are will always shine.
And the thing is, and I think it's so important, because I always tell people relationships, this is how fundamentally they affect us. Friendships, relationships, whatever. Every time you have a relationship breakup, this could be friends, it could be your partner, whatever. Imagine two pieces of paper. You stick them together and you try to part them. There'll be a little bit of paper on there and a little bit of paper on there. And every time you go through these breakups, you lose a little bit of yourself.
Yes, you do. Yes.
And that, you know, and that's going to happen. Yeah. But you need to learn how to build yourself back up after that.
Yeah.
And also, you then also have to recognize, I didn't like that. And that's not the type of person I want around me. And as I keep saying to everybody, my partner, everybody who will listen, I love me first. I said it. I love me first. So anybody who is in my life, they enhance me, but they are not the soul of my happiness, because I love me first.
And that is a perfect place to say, Diahanne Rhiney, thank you very much, because in here, I want to get dealing and finding the building blocks to keep your psychological wellness balanced during grief, during relationships, during friendships, at work. So many other areas we could have covered. But Diahanne, thank you so much. Tell me very quickly about My Caroline.
So My Caroline is a community of Black women and women of Black heritage, and we are all about your wellness and your well-being. So I say come along for the journey, because as I sign off, I always sign off, I am Caroline Rhiney's daughter. So My Caroline, join us at, www.mycaroline.co.uk.
Diahanne Rhiney, I would say at this point, thank you for being a part of season 2 with Wellness Wednesday, but something's telling me there could be another few more episodes before we round this season off.
And we need to have you on My Caroline.
Oh, I'd love
and
to.
I'm telling you, I'm sure we can.
I would love to.
Angie and I can talk, yeah?
That we can. We haven't even scratched the surface. Diahanne, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. And for those out there, Wellness Wednesday, remember, self first.